Welcome to Origin Stories. I'm RD.
I'm Parrot.
We're telling stories behind the digital art revolution
Each week we interview top artists.
and live stream with the community.
Let's go. Today is tomorrow's Origin story.
Welcome to Origin Stories.
Hey, it's great to be with you, Roger. So excited to do this, man.
Likewise, I'm excited too, and I have to say right off the bat, you have brought the most impressive backdrop to an origin story that maybe I've seen yet.
Well, thank you. I love that. It would be really funny if it wasn't real. A kind of funny thing is whenever we're doing dev calls for music software, if one of us has to get up for a second, if somebody needs to go get a snack or refill their water or whatever, people have screenshot my studio, and then I'll come back to the meeting and everyone is in my studio. It's a kind of funny thing. But in all seriousness, this room represents, I'm so incredibly blessed to get to work in a room like this. And it's like a space that I've been trying to build since I was a kid. And a lot of these instruments, like that one, I don't know if you can see right there, that's my first keyboard ever. I got that mowing lawns when I was 12. So it's a lot of memories in this room too. And it's a pretty awesome place to work for sure.
So you mentioned as a kid, you mentioned mowing lawns when you were 12, and I think it's the best time to ask you how we start every episode. BT, what is your origin story?
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, I think my origin story is pretty complex, but it is good, I think, to frame it from the early days, because it's as with everyone, whether it's via great parenting and interesting life experience or via trauma, all of us are sort of sculpted by the sum total of our experiences, and often the most significant ones happen when we're kids. So I guess that's usually a good place to start with me. I expressed in the arts very early, and so I come from a family of academics, I would say. My father has a doctorate in engineering, but ended up working for the FBI. So I have like these really wild thing, which means I have a file, which is cool to know. All FBI kids have files. And then my mom too is a doctor. She's a psychiatrist, and so my parents are these really brainy people. And they were, and in many ways, I think rightfully concerned with their son expressing in the arts, because at the time then, it was a very reasonable thing. I grew up in this hyper kind of conservative suburban, Maryland, right? And so the thought of being, an artist of any sort was it was kind of a non-starter. And so my parents were really freaked out by that, but I begged and pleaded to play piano when I was very, very young. I started taking piano lessons when I was 4. I studied Suzuki method. I went to local conservatory in Washington, D.C., called the Washington Conservatory of Music. And I studied with this brilliant, brilliant man who to this day is still someone that I have the pleasure of speaking with every now and again. He's 102 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, and his name is Sotirios Vlahopoulos. He's this insanely accomplished classical composer, and he's still so with it. It's amazing. He's still composing. Anyway, he taught me when I was a kid, and he exposed me to, I think one of the cool things is, and this I guess is for parents too to be thinking about, is exposing your kids when possible to interesting teachers. And man, I really lucked out in that capacity. And Sotirios was kind of my first, where it was a real light bulb moment when he should have been playing me, we call them the Bs, Beethoven, Brahms, Bach, these guys. He was playing me different Bs. He was playing me Bartok and these crazy composers like Penderecki and Stravinsky. And my little like 8-year-old brain was just exploding with this idea of what was possible with music. And then, this conservative family, and think, their son's going to be a doctor or a lawyer, and was so freaked out that I chose a path in music. And So at any rate, flash forward, I guess, probably 10 years, and I'm studying and working and doing all my things. And I all of my interest in synthesis comes from European, specifically like English New Wave culture, and then a lot too, actually, from early like breakdance culture. And so, um, while I was going down, taking the metro down to DC to study on the weekends at this conservatory, I also discovered the Hirshhorn Gallery of Art. And in doing that, there started to be some really interesting pairings where modern classical ensembles of composers were performing in the basement of the Hirshhorn. And so cool. My wife and I I think right before pandemic, so probably about 2.5 years ago, we saw Tycho perform in the same place that I used to go when I was like, I don't know, 11, 12-year-old kid to go look at art and listen to music. So another big aha moment for me was being in this gallery filled with beautiful, abstract and postmodern impressionistic art, incredible works of art, and hear the Kronos String Quartet play Jimi Hendrix. So they played Shostakovich, and they played all these classical composers, and then they finished their set with Jimi Hendrix. And so, yeah, I just got exposed to some wild stuff as a kid. But the synth thing happened from breakdance music and culture, and then, like I said, it sounds like a joke, but it's real. I started mowing lawns and delivery papers and doing all these things to buy my first instruments. And then I guess the sum total culmination of that whole chapter of my life is I went to school really early. And so I left high school when I was in 10th grade, my second semester of 10th grade. And I actually was accepted because I was doing drawing and painting as well to RISD and to Berkeley. And I decided to go to Berkeley. And it was a really hard choice too, because some of my favorite musicians are artists like David Byrne. And I always thought it was so cool that, and Peter Gabriel, that they went to like art schools and not music school or whatever. But of course, that was a huge, big uproar in my family. And they're like, oh my God, our son's going to be homeless. And, then my parents were so scared about me actually pursuing a career in the arts. And it's something I love getting to talk to young, like college and high school students about now, is that you actually can have a career in the arts, and it's not just being in, being Billie Eilish or whatever, that we think of as kind of success, to have, a living wage as an artist. So at any rate, that's kind of my whole sort of youth in a nutshell. And I went to Berkeley when I was 15, which was terrifying and exciting in equal measure, because it was like everybody was getting wasted and just, chaos. And I'm like this really nerdy 15-year-old kid that's into computers and synths, and so socially highly awkward. Still am a little bit, you're not gonna lie, and which is weird for, I think, somebody that does what I do. But at any rate, and then but incredible stimulus creatively, and so yeah, and there's a lot more obviously after that, but that is my early origin story, at least.
So this may be skipping ahead a bit, but I am curious, what is the first turning point that you can remember for your parents where something happened? Maybe you did something, maybe something was accomplished, where one or both of them looked at it and said, oh, like you got the first glimmer of, maybe they're no longer scared that I'll be homeless. Maybe they are now actually seeing me trailblaze this path.
That's a really hard question to answer, honestly, Roger, because it's pretty emotional, because you brought like a really visceral memory to me. So I know exactly when that was. It's different for my mom and dad. My mom and dad are very different, very wildly different sorts of people. So interesting as an adult, reading things like, love languages, and like understanding my Myers-Briggs and some of these kind of things, to see how different some people have parents that are similar. My parents are so different. My dad's very introverted, like I am. He's probably an INTJ. He's never done his Myers-Briggs. I've always tried to get him to do it. Our love languages are totally different. It's just like I have no idea how they've communicated all this time. So it was different for both of them, but I'm going to share the one with my mom because it was really special and it was very visceral too. So I had a show in Australia, and I brought my mom and my aunt on this trip, and it was in the 90s, and they were so excited. They'd never been to Australia, and we had the show at what's called the Docklands in Melbourne, and it was this super exciting thing. And so we went there, and it would have been one of the first shows since like talent shows and piano recitals and things like that my mom had seen me play. And so I got her all situated. She was on the side of the stage, and the show was insane. And like it sounds like an airplane hangar. Airplane hangar doors were open. It was oversold. It's like a 25,000 capacity thing, and they sold 30,000 tickets. It's probably unsafe. Probably couldn't do that now. And so at any rate, the whole set. So and it was amazing. The energy of Australian people and just their culture is so awesome, as you know, if you've been anybody watching this or listening. And so it was this incredible feeling in that room, and I couldn't take my eyes off my mom, who was on the side of the stage, and she kind of vacillated between being emotional and like tearing up and just kind of being in the moment. And I could see her face when I think about it now so clearly. And this is not like a slight of my mom either, but she's not the sort of person, kind of, again, love language thing, like word of affirmation sort of person that will say it out loud to you. It's more of an expression through an action. And so that was the first time I saw on her face that she understood that, my passion from such a young age about something meant something, and it meant something to other people, not just to me, which is still remarkable to me to this day. It's just, a miracle of sorts. And so it's a really powerful memory. I appreciate you asking that question. That's a great question.
It's a special moment. It's a special, especially since, you're talking about her vacillating between being in the moment and experiencing what's going on and being somewhat emotional. I imagine maybe the same thing was happening for you, where you're experiencing being in the moment and playing, but also witnessing your mom have this type of reaction towards what's going on.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, performance is such a strange thing. I think in general, the sort of space that you get into, and I've had some crazy conversations with friends about this, and it really depends a lot, I think, on, it's interesting, this personality type thing has kind of come up early in this conversation. I'm obsessed with these kind of things. My mom also too is a shrink. So like I grew up, reading all of her crazy books and white papers and was interested in those kind of things. But it is different, interesting how different personalities experience performance. And, I have friends that are really extroverted, and of course, extroverted folks, it's like they wake up with no gold coins, and they go out during the day and they collect these gold coins that are like, relational energy. And then they feel complete, and their way of being connected and kind of relational success for extroverted people is connection, human connection. Whereas introverted people, by the way, love people too. I love people. I love being around people. It's amazing. I have so many close friends. However, introverted people, we recharge alone. So it's like we wake up with 10 gold coins, I've heard people say, and then throughout the day you give them away, and you wake up the next morning and you have another 10, and it's just that kind of difference. So for performance, it's very interesting because I find myself both very in the moment, and also in some ways, it's going to sound, it's a weird word to choose because it's a very positive experience. Like I feel so the reward of that kind of connection is amazing, and I feel depleted after a performance. And so that's one of probably 10 shows I can think of in my entire life out of thousands where I was super, super present, because my mom, who I love, was there on the side of the stage having this experience, and I could see it. So yeah, I really appreciate you asking that question. I haven't thought of that for years. So it's a cool question.
Let's take it one step further. You mentioned, by the way, I love the gold coins. I love the gold coins. I think I fall into the category of introvertedness, where I definitely can turn it on. I love people. I want to be out there. I want to have interesting conversation. Obviously, origin stories, right? You're number 60,
Yeah.
by the way. Number 60. It's kind of fun.
Nice, man. Congratulations.
And congrats to you. Yeah, it's fun intersecting here in this moment. But you just made me really reflect on more about who I am and why I do what I do. But I would say it's much that way. Wake up recharged and renewed, and you have a new supply of gold coins. And then I think the best days are when you thoughtfully give them away.
Exactly. You're totally right, man. And it feels so good to do it too. I think that the one of the hard things for people that might be extroverted to understand about introverts is that we love people. It's like a weird, they're like, "What are you freaking out? Like, are you okay?" And it's like, no, I just need to go for a walk in the woods and kind of charge the batteries, and then I'll be back jumping on the couches with you guys. It's just a different way of recharging. They get charged up from people, and we get charged up from quiet time, and both are great. So yeah, it's just different.
Yeah. So you mentioned 10 shows. I know it's a ballpark number, but you mentioned that was one of 10 shows that put you in that, I guess, intense flow state. Can you talk about one more somewhere along that journey?
Yeah, for sure. It's so cool you say flow state. So all of them put me in flow state. You are like hyper in the moment. It's just the difference is in them being memorable is like you're in the moment on what you're doing. And this is wild. I'm like this. It's a real time distinction. You're in the moment on what you're doing, like the internal kind of process that's happening, and like, oh, okay, F sharp minor 9 happens here. Make sure that we're acknowledging the audience reaction to this moment here. These kind of things. Then an extrinsic experience where you're kind of with everyone. It's much more insular. I think the experience, at least personally, the experience of performance, because I'm like hyper focused on, oh, I made a mistake here, and make sure to pick up this next thing there, and these kind of things. So but the ones where it's been this beautiful balance of kind of like internal world and external world, where you're with people, like you're really present for people. Yeah, it's probably been like 10 of them, but I mean, they come to me immediately, because there have been some that have been so incredibly special. I mean, I rattle off a couple if you want. There's
Please.
like,
Yeah.
so one was, a recent one was playing at the Brandenburg Gate right before quarantine. So it was my last show for a 2-year period, which is bananas. I've been performing pretty much literally my whole life, including like piano recitals as a kid. So and that would have been turning 2020, and I played with Howard Jones, who's like childhood superhero of mine, demigod of sorts. Like, had an entire wall, this real life of posters devoted to Howard Jones in my room. And so just even that I know him is just like, I still can't even, it's ridiculous. But I was lucky enough to perform with him, and at the Brandenburg Gate for the anniversary, the 25th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall, and there were 1 million people. It was the largest audience I've ever played for in my life, and it was like electric. I was actually my experience was more extrinsic there than it was intrinsic. I probably sucked. I like literally don't even remember what my performance was like. The experience of my family was there, and then Howard's there on stage. It was just, and all the people there. it was an incredible experience. So that's kind of a recent one, but there have been some that have been remarkably memorable that I don't know, it makes you wonder, like, if you'll ever understand why a performance was felt so powerful and special. There's ones like Red Rocks. I mean, like one of a couple Red Rock shows that I've played in particular is like a huge standout, and it's just magical. And I could just remember everyone holding, lighters and glow sticks, and the like whole wall there being lit up. And but then there are some, like, playing in some little club in Ecuador, where there's 150 people, and it's like just absolute magic, like total magic. And then you end up spending the entire night there, hanging out with everybody the whole night, playing for, like, my set was supposed to be like 90 minutes. I played for like 6 hours, and it was just pandemonium. And all of us, self included, it's just a magical night. I remember my whole life. But it's something that it's wild. Live performance is such a unique thing to get to experience, and I love it for sure. It's an amazing thing to do.
It's an amazing to revisit all the variables, right? You have the raw, in the first example, you have the raw power of 1 million people. I mean, any way you slice it, being in that kind of a presence where everyone or almost everyone's focused on the exact same thing, and it happens to be in large part you and what you're producing in that moment, unbelievable. Then you have the ambiance, then you have the people present who are maybe extremely close to you, and then you have the small intimate club. I mean, so many variables that can come together to produce these memorable times.
Yeah, you're totally right. I mean, you're totally right. It's like, again, I have lived like such an incredibly blessed life. It's not even funny. I'm so lucky to get to do all these things that I love, and just I would do all of these things if no one cared. And that I'm lucky enough to have people that are engaged in the work that I've done and are interested. Is just like, it literally, I wake up every day kind of in shock that that's even possible. So performance is definitely a big piece of that. There's no question.
Amazing. So for those who are listening and not viewing, BT has the most amazing studio set up with so many intricate pieces of your background. And early on, you had pointed to the one that you said was you acquired when you were 12 years old.
Yeah.
Can you maybe point to, and we'll verbalize it for, again, people who may not be watching, but a few more instruments in the room that mean something to them?
I would love to do that. No one's asked me that. Okay, so right here, this guy right here,
Yeah.
okay? This, what you see with the CRT monitor, okay? And that is a mainframe computer that works with this CRT and this keyboard here, okay? These speakers here are not a part of it, but this is how nerdy I am. I laser matched the paint. I painted those speakers myself, and I put green LEDs in it to match this monochrome monitor. So the story of this instrument is when I was a kid, all of my favorite records were made on that. All of them, literally, like my top favorite records. So all of Trevor Horn's productions, right? Propaganda, even some of the Depeche Mode stuff, although there's more synclavier than Fairlight, but similar sort of instrument. Kate Bush, Peter Gabriel. I mean, like, my favorite artists. Thomas Dolby made the most amazing records on this. And so, of course, I wanted one of these things so bad, and that was completely and totally out of my reach. And it's funny because now you could buy one of these, albeit in like a destroyed state. There's very few of them that remain working. And for hardly anything, no one would want it. It's so much work to work on. But I wanted this thing so bad since I was a kid, and so I found it in pieces. So this keyboard right here was used on the first Tron, real life. And when I got it, it had stickers on it on the keys that said like light cycle burn, different sound effect noises. And so I did something called retrobrighting to that keyboard, where it basically looks like a meth lab in your bathtub. My wife and I took every key off that. You have like grow lights. I'm totally serious. Anybody listening that has never heard of retrobrighting, look it up. It's a way to remove yellow from plastics. Took like 3 months. Hand repainted the keyboard, rebuilt the entire mainframe computer to the metal, recapped the whole thing, installed MIDI, a CF card reader in it. It's like a modern instrument now. And it sounds freaking insane, Roger. It's like, it's not one of those things where you're like, wow, that was a lot of work for nothing. Like, it's like a talisman or an amulet of sorts. It's this magical instrument. And because we all work in our computers now, and things like this are so hard to work on and to maintain and to keep, it's like, people, it's rare to see something like this. And so, because it's a pain in the ass, actually. But my gosh, it sounds so insane. So, and little story about this monitor too that's cool. I was lucky enough to have Stuart Copeland, play from the Police, play drums on these Hopeful Machines, and he's been kind of a friend ever since. That's my record from like 2010. And so the Police were big Fairlight users. And so, when I got the mainframe and the monitor was broken in transit, and it's like unicorn tears, like you're never going to get one of these things, right? So I looked everywhere. This is not something that comes up in an eBay search. And so I'm looking everywhere. No one's got one. And I thought to email Stuart, and I said, hey, Stuart, it's BT. Is there any way that you have one of these old monitors in storage? I'll buy it from you. It'd be such an honor. And I didn't hear back from him. He's really responsive too. So I was like, I wonder, I guess maybe they're out on the road and stuff. And then, so 2 weeks later, there's a box at our mailbox, and it's the monitor. And it was like, it looked like it had been in a war of sorts. Like, it had filth all over it. So I cleaned it and repainted it and stuff. And of course, thanked him profusely. But so that system's got this incredible history, and it sounds like it too. There's all kinds of cool instruments like that in here. This one right here is a prototype instrument called GDS. It was built at Bell Laboratories. They only ever made 2 of them, and Klaus Schultz from Tangerine Dream had that, and it was in this wild, basically like a German family had it in a collection, and they were going to put it in a museum, and the son was like, oh, BT, I love your music. We'd love for you to have this. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? And so in theory, this has to go into like a what's it called, a trust someday when I'm worm food. But anyway, it's so cool to have it here. It's like amazing instrument, but there's crazy stuff like that in here. A lot of this stuff like here on the walls, and you can't see, there's a bunch going down below that as well too on the other side, but are things literally from when I was a kid. And so many of these instruments now, it's like they're so prized, but they were literally when being thrown in dumpsters in the early 90s. And so I got a lot of stuff then that people were moving on to the next levels of gear, and I just learned to fix it up and take care of it. And I love these instruments so much. I've spent as much time playing them as I have inside them, working on them. I got a workbench in the other room and put on some new order and solder, new caps and these things. It's kind of like my, it's very meditative practice. And so there's so much love in these instruments that I hope translates into my work. And it certainly does for me, kind of like the emotional connection to them. They really do mean something to me. So
these are special stories. I like that you have this other practice of, like you said, stepping inside of these machines and refurbishing and going to such great lengths to make them both sound and look how you want them to. And now your legacy is all over the room. It's on the walls, it's on the tables.
It's true. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's funny. It's like, I just, it's wild. This room is like, is definitely a 1-person room. Like my friends that are like traditional engineers, they come in here and they're like, whoa, bro, like sounds amazing in here, but like, where's the mixing board? You know, like I would be sitting where there would be a mixing board normally. So it's definitely a weird spot made for one person, but I feel so lucky to work in it, man. It's awesome. It's great writing music out here.
Let's center ourselves pre and then post quarantine, because I imagine that is where this incredibly accomplished and long journey coincides with, of course, our sweet spot and our connection, which is in the crazy NFT world. So
Yep.
you reflected on this show, the last show prior to quarantine, and then this 2-year period that elapsed without playing a show on the road. So take us through the early stretches of that, and then what actually led you into producing NFTs.
It's great segue. And it's really a great observation too. It's amazing. You know, I think that, I mean, there's all the obvious things that were so hard for all of us during this period of being without our families and our friends, and, you know, lack of relational interaction and all these kind of things. And then of course losing people too. It's like we lost a couple people I know. It's hard to talk to someone that doesn't have at least one degree of separation that lost someone from COVID. So it's this incredible hard time for everyone emotionally. Like it's funny because you think about like our parents' generation or our grandparents' generation, and they can talk to us about world wars, and our grandparents' generation about the Great Depression and these kind of things. And it's wild. I wish my grandparents were still alive, because I know that, I mean, in talking to my dad about it, he's like, this is very unique what you guys, and you know, him too, but he's like, he's on the other side of these kind of things. You know, so he's not like out working and doing all these kind of things. You know, is just saying how unique it is what we've experienced emotionally, what we've been through, what it means for kids too. You know, it's wild to think about. It's like the way that we know what one another's feeling is by seeing each other's face. And you know, it's hard to see, you know, kids playing in masks, of course, you know, appropriate for the period of time that we've done it. But you just think about the kind of emotional cost of that. So at any rate, you know, it's interesting as things locked up, you know, slowly at first, as we all remember. You know, and it was like there's no way shows were going to happen, and I started to hear about some of these things, right? And I've actually started to hear about them before that. So Justin Blau was the first person that ever told me about an NFT. Is number one. He's my point of connection to the whole thing. And he sent me a text ages ago now, before quarantine, and was just like, you of all people need to look at this. And it couldn't wrap my head around it. I really didn't understand it to start with. Like, the part that it took a while to click for me is this idea of ownership over a digital asset. And that, though, is not the most special thing to me about it. It's the most special thing as it relates to what it means to, you know, my peers, and why I'm so bullish on it and want to talk to the music community about it, because it's actually this completely new dynamic that's so much fairer of an exchange, and, you know, takes the lecherous managers and agents and record labels and all this legacy Web 2 kind of, you know, thing out of music, which it's been so polluted with for so long, which is a bit of a different conversation. So that's exciting. It's more exciting to tell my peers about that, though. What excited me about it so much, and the real aha moment for me when it really clicked, was when I realized that a lot of the music software that I'd been developing for 15 years at that point, and all of my interest in music, and all of my interest in art and graphic art and album cover design and video making and all these kind of things, that there was this meeting point of these things. And when I first saw NFTs, and it was like people were, you know, and there was all the kind of FUD and freak out, like as a JPEG, you know, and I'm like, but it doesn't have to be. This could be way bigger than a JPEG. Like this could be a physical asset that's bound to a digital token. This could be something that's programmatic that changes forever. This could be something that is monitoring your internal dialogue and your heart rate variance or your glucose levels and reacting in real time. And it was just like this complete explosion moment of creative thought right as things locked down. So, you know, cut off from my normal means of expression, which certainly, you know, live performance is a big part of, and also too being out and working with other people, not just in my own room, but you know, working in person with other people. All those things were gone, and so I just threw myself in head first and said, "This seems like a place where I can make something that is really unique, that is in a unique creative voice that speaks to people emotionally in a new way." And I was hooked. And it's like there was a before and an after that. When that light bulb or that fuse really was lit, there's just no putting it out. It's like, you know, this is me for life now. So it's like, it's not like there aren't other things that I'm interested in. You know, I've been scoring a video game for 3 years. You know, I love doing live shows, but this has become such an exciting focus developing in the NFT space in my life, because it represents an intersection of these things I love so much, that I'm so passionate about each one of them. So,
Isn't it wild when you arrive at a door that you feel like was made for you, and that becomes the aha moment? Like, holy shit! Everything that I've been doing, it feels in a way that it was building to that particular moment.
Roger, you keep saying these things that are like make me emotional. I don't know if it's because like I have this emotional point of connection with you because of the things that we've talked about. But it's, yeah, it's a very real thing. Without sharing who the artist is, at Art Basel in Miami, we were with some friends and we were at this party, and it was this big loud party or whatever. And this artist said to me, she's like, talking to you, she's like, I can tell that you've turned yourself down to a 6 your whole life. And she's like, and you're like allowed to be you now. And I burst into tears like a party. And it was one of the most powerful things anyone had ever said to me. And she like a laser hit it right on the nose. You know, amongst my dance music peers, we're talking all about performance. I love it so much. And there's a very kind of lifestyle thing that surrounds that's never appealed to me at all whatsoever, you know. Not that it's bad, it's cool. And I think a lot of people go through a phase and then they kind of phase out of that and they go into whatever their chosen career path is. But for people that actually do it that's their job, they kind of, there's a drain that they can circle that's like just this lifestyle thing. And I've always felt left out of that in a lot of ways. I don't drink, you know, I'm like, you know, I'm into like clean eating and meditation. And so I've just, you know, I haven't been like out partying with everybody, and I've always felt left out in that way. And so therefore my point of connection with those peers is about music, but it's this very superficial level about music and about producing music. And of course I have some good friends there too, but you know, as it relates to like being out and performances and what that's like in person. And then like the film composers, they're always like, who's this weird guy with like synthesizers, and like I've never kind of been taken seriously there. I've actually heard this a funny story when I went to the podium to get the baton to conduct for Fast and Furious. I picked the baton up. It's a true story, Roger. I picked the baton up, and the first chair violinist came up and they said, oh, what are you doing? And I was like totally shocked. Like, you're going to the principal? And they're like, you have to put that down. That's only the composer to touch. And so I'm like, apologetically, I'm like, it's me. I wrote this stuff. We're gonna play. I'm sorry. I think what I don't understand. So like, that's a very the whole classical and film composing world is its own different thing. And of course, I have great friends there too. But insofar as being, considered like a part of the clique, there have never really felt like that, even though I've done so much of it. And then I think my artist and my programmer friends are the ones that have kind of gotten me the most, and but it's just like all these things that I love where I just feel like I could be myself, and it's okay that I'm super freaking nerdy, pretty introverted, and you catch me talking about coding or meditation or whatever, Basquiat. Like, I love these things. I'm a weirdo like that, and I just feel like I found my tribe. And yeah, it's hard not to get emotional about that. I think that there's this space for people that have felt left out in other parts of the arts, and this is such a welcoming space where all of us are helping and shepherding other people through the process and loving on people when they get stuck. And it sounds so cliche, but you hear people talk about, rising tide. It's a real thing. It's like I've the only thing that I've participated in that's felt anything like this is the early days of rave culture, where um, where people were really, really there for the community, and they were really, really there for the music. And it was this beautiful, beautiful time. And it's the first thing I felt since then like that.
So when you end up in that moment and you feel like that moment is so geared to you and you feel at home, you feel like you found your tribe, how do you decide what to contribute first?
That's a great question. It's a hard question too. So, I think that the way that I arrived at the first thing that I was going to do is, I said, I want to do something okay, from a programming vantage point, I saw all of this amazing stuff happening in Solidity development. I immediately wanted to go, well, what is this? Okay, well, it's a variant of vanilla JavaScript. Okay, I got to check this out. What are people doing with this? And when I realized that some of the things that were so exciting and appealing early works, the stuff that Richard with an E has done, and Manifold, Richard's dear friend, a freaking genius, that guy. But from Pac and Mad Dog Jones and some of these guys that were doing this interesting, clever smart contract functionality in their works, I thought that's incredible, and I definitely want to experiment with that. And what if I made something that is more related to my music software background, kind of mixed with a lot of the sort of artwork that I've done as it relates to music videos and album artwork, but wrapped it in something that's very personal. And so the idea for Genesis.Json, I don't know if you've heard this or not, but came from this grandfather clock that I grew up with that drove me absolutely insane. And my dad loved this thing, so still loves this thing. I have to listen to it every time I visit my parents. But it clicked for me why this meant so much. It was his father's and his father's father's, and he's taking care of it. And what's so incredible about a grandfather clock is it's memorializing the passage of time in 15-minute increments. So it's reminding you that time is passing, and it's baked around a piece of art. And that never clicked for me as a kid. And between that and the experience of working on Disney Shanghai, which was this installation thing where I wrote all these pieces of music to interrelate with one another, and there was a plan for like time and how time affected your experience of these intersecting pieces of music. It really was the meeting point of those two ideas that, what if I do something that memorializes the passage of time, that's programmatic, and that functions like an installation piece, but on the blockchain. And so that was like the early dry board stuff. And then it grew into, okay, great. Now I have to teach myself how to make a 3D space because I want to do something that's skeuomorphic because I love things like that. And it grew from there. And so I think that the big marching order was I really wanted to do something that was programmatic, but not as it related to a smart contract because so much innovation was already being done there. So I wanted to kind of plant a flag differently,
Mm-hmm. And then keep walking us forward, because I love you, speaking to my heart here. But keep walking us forward from you see what's going on with Solidity. I love the shout out to Richard. Love Richard as a person, innovator, a thought leader. But then you decided to go again more towards your software background, diving in there and keep walking it forward, especially for people who may not have heard the stories. How do you get from that point to creation to release?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, a thrilling and terrifying thing because this is, mind you, April 20. If that's a year ago, I'm going to freak out. It can't be. It's got to be 2020. Is that possible? No, it's 2021, isn't it?
2021.
That's insane. If that feels
it's
like
a time warp. It's 100% a time warp.
That feels like 4 lifetimes ago. So, from that moment of building something and kind of then soak testing it to, here's the thing that for people that are interested in any sort of programmatic work, be it on the blockchain or, well, it actually is specific to blockchain programmatic works, you get one shot. So when you're developing software, for example, we release things way before they're done. Everybody does this. It's, Apple is the most famous for it. It's like you release software and, the target audience for using said software, right? Like with music software producers, for me, they're going to tell you, of course, you try to get all the bugs out of it, working on every system you possibly can. They're immediately going to use it in contexts and situations with weird USB devices and stuff you can't test for. And they're going to give you feedback and say, hey, it's broken. I'm getting a bug when such and such. And you go and patch the bug and fix it. And then everybody's happy. With a programmatic blockchain piece, you get one shot. And that's it. There's no bug fixing. There's no going back and like, oh, I wish I had done this. I wish I could do this. There's none of that. Interesting story about Genesis.Json too, because we've been talking with Pranksy recently, and that piece is written in a bunch of languages, but React being one of the primary languages. And it was before I had discovered iframes. And so that my second piece, Metaversal, actually, it's funny because I hear people talk about iframes all the time now. I remember Lacey and I, my beautiful wife Lacey and I, on the phone with the OpenSea team till 5 a.m. There had never been an NFT in an iframe. It didn't exist. We begged and pleaded with the OpenSea engineers. They were so excited about it and accommodating. And now, of course, it's like a universal part of the language of kind of programmatic blockchain art. That's in less than a year. Yeah, so Pranksy recently was like, I would love it if I could have mine in an iframe, and so that it can be shown. It can be seen on other protocols, not just from his terminal endpoint. And so we might actually burn that token for him and rebuild it in an iframe, which I think would be really cool. But of course, he has to be cool with that, and so we're talking. But he asked for it, so we're talking about it, which is exciting. Yeah, it was from that moment of finishing something. It was terrifying, Roger, is my point, because I tested it. I had so many friends testing in different countries, in Australia and in England, on the West Coast, in California, and everybody pummeling it and seeing if they could make it screw up. And when I got it to a point where it felt bench tested enough, we decided it was time, and it was Amir, so Mondwar, and some of these people early that gave us so much guidance and feedback. And Mondwar was actually the person that introduced me to the Super Rare team, and he said, this is something that should come out on your protocol. And he's like, BT, these are good people. And so that's how our relationship with Super Rare began. And of course, they're one of the most incredible protocols there is. I love that entire team from David. I mean, there's so many amazing people there. And they were just generous and kind with us and let us do this crazy thing on their protocol. So it was terrifying. I'm not gonna lie. Every single one of these is terrifying. It's like it's like I go into a cave. I'm doing it right now. Think of the craziest, newest, most never done before thing you can think of. It's technically impossible, and you go, oh well, no one would want to do that because it's too hard. And then, but it would be so cool if, right? And it would make people feel so much if, and so then you go and build it, and then you find the right people to partner with to put it out. And it's a roller coaster ride that is nothing in my life has ever been like these launches. So yeah, I mean, I just have a lot of compassion for artists that are drawn to this, because I think it involves a lot of self-compassion and a lot of recoup when you're done with one of these big projects. These are not things that to just run into and then straight into the next one. It's like you really need a second to kind of defrag your brain, let your family know you're alive, and then on to the next one, celebrate, and then on to the next one. So it's different than any other thing I've ever released.
Now, when you set the relationship with Super Rare and you're producing something so incredibly special, how do you even frame expectations for what is about to transpire for the ultimate collection and sale of such a thing? How are you even thinking about that before you have a framework? Now, obviously, you can look at other examples that exist out there, but you're doing something a bit different, a bit new and unique, and you are trailblazing in that way. So how are you framing expectations prior to release?
It's a great question. Honestly, we really didn't know how to. There wasn't, because, it's so different. If you're releasing a piece of music software or you're composing music for a film, I mean, I guess releasing a piece of music software is the only one that is even related in my world to, because you're just a buyout on a film like that, paid as a composer. I show up, I do the work. I fight for the things I believe in. Hopefully the director's a cool person. Write the most meaningful music I can. Record with an orchestra, mix the score into the film, and you're done. It's like, you may see some kind of mechanical residuals from that, but there's not like a post expectation. It's really about, your wage for that is paid as a wage. And so, with music software too, it's really hard to estimate. You think, oh, there's potentially X thousand number of people that this would appeal to, but you really have no idea when you're releasing something. And sometimes, frankly, things that you think are like incredible and everyone would need, no one is like, gets it, or might get it way later. That happened with Break Tweaker. And then other things are just like this runaway kind of thing that's unpredictable. So I had a similar experience with Genesis.Json, with all of these things. I mean, these are questions my friends are asking guidance for on all the time: how to price their works, what are good people to partner with that are honest, that will, not try to cull them creatively, and these kind of things. And man, calibrating your expectations with NFTs is really, really hard to do. And so this is absolutely 100% from the bottom of my heart how we went into it, was without expectations. And here's how. Like, the finish line for Genesis.Json was like, I knew that we made something that was special and was unique, and that was going to exist forever. And I didn't know if people would care, but I knew that it was something that was special and that hadn't happened. And I was very proud of the art and very proud of the music and very proud of the programming. And that was the finish line. And it sounds like some kind of hippy dippy kind of thing, but I really mean it. Like if that piece hadn't even sold, I would still be proud of it. So my expectations for Genesis.Json were to finish. And so we finished. And then that one was just pure unbridled wildness, excitement, because we'd never gone on this crazy ride before. And so it's funny because Lacey and I had very different experiences. I'll never forget us like in this clubhouse room, Roger, and like Lacey's in our kitchen and she's literally on like 4 devices on iPads. She's talking to all of our friends and different collectors and stuff. I'm in the living room on we're both on Clubhouse, but I'm in the living room on Clubhouse, tears streaming down my face. I'm so emotional. There's these crazy bids coming in. I feel like validated for the first time in my life. I'm like, people understand me. Oh my God, like having this super emotional experience. And Lacey's like in the kitchen, like having a party. She's got on like, she's going crazy in we had totally different experiences. Then of course, after we both celebrated together, but I didn't have expectations, it was really more of a proof of concept. Like, can an artist make something this involved and it strike a chord emotionally with people, and does that have value? It's more of an experiment. In fact, all of these have been like more like experiments than these kind of really wildly planned events. So it's what part of what's fun about it and existentially terrifying about it is they're hard to plan for,
I enjoy that. I enjoy that, trying to go in with no expectations and then it unfolding as it is. It's just the visual of you in 2 separate rooms having these 2 different emotional experiences. It's incredible to think about, but I can see it. I really can see it because it is such strange, fresh territory at that time for the whole space, but especially for yourself with your very first experience and having pushed those boundaries. So framing it like that, you go into the cave, you break out of it, whatever happens, right? You take your downtime, reach peace, and then go do it all over again. So talk about doing it all over again. It was Metaversal that was next.
Yeah, Metaversal was next. And it's funny, it's my the way that sort of my creative life works is there's a lot of intersection and overlap. And so it took close to a year to make Genesis.Json, and during that time, for about 6 months of it, began the work of Metaversal. So Metaversal is an album started in the other room. I wish you could see it here, because when I say other room, it's like there's 2 of these. There's definitely not. It's like my like little shop. You could touch both the walls in there. There's a soldering iron and a couple keyboards and an electric piano. And when we're making this room, which took 3 full years to make, and it's a crazy experience. And we stuck the landing, I guess. But was really hard to not have a place to write in. And so one of my closest friends, named Eric Johnson, he and I piled a bunch of gear into my shop, and with a little like a 4-track, nothing like professional, like old half working gear. And I started writing a record in there. Almost immediately, it just started to happen. There's no, internet in there, or, you can't check email. It's like I have this old IBM PS2 386 lunchbox. It's like a monochrome monitor to sequence on. And it's really old school, rudimentary, nothing that people would use to make music on now. And this record just started coming out of me. I had a lot of pent up creative energy. And immediately as I started making this record, I started thinking about, what could this mean in in a blockchain work. And so I immediately started thinking about wrapping a program around the album, and what would it mean? I mean, how are we listening to stereo music and it's 2022, right? Like, is that serious? Thank God for that. I just ordered one of those Kanye stem players. Have you seen those freaking things?
No.
Oh, dude, they're so literally when we hang up, please go get one of those. If you don't like it, I'll pay you back. And I'm serious, it's so freaking cool. It's like this little, it's like looks like a hockey puck covered in like almost like the iPhone protectors, kind of gummy skin, and it allows you to play. And it's just his new album on there. Not shilling Kanye, I don't know him, but I actually love Kanye West. But and this record's great too. But it's so sick. It's got like basically 4 LED sliders on it, and you can turn the vocal off, or you can turn the beats on. It's so freaking cool in a little self-contained player. So but things like this super appeal to me. I'm always thinking, how is it that we're listening to stereo non-context driven music and it's 2022, yet we have cars that drive themselves and we can see video over the internet? Like, how are, it's just this mismatch of where things are at with music. So one of my first thoughts was, what is the most futuristic thing you can think of for an album? And my thought is to make an album that's context driven, that's driven by time. And so after I'd written all the songs for Metaversal, I went and remixed all of the songs as nighttime versions of the songs. And then I went back again and I did these ambient versions of the songs. So in all total, 33 pieces of music. And the ambient versions were for the lunar cycle. And then I built this programmatic work of art that displays the songs as like this moving audio reactive constellation. And you're able to switch between moving audio reactive constellation and kind of a gallery skeuomorphic, paintings that change, and the angle of lighting changes in 3D and shows the NFTs that represent each one of the songs. And I thought, this is the coolest thing, like a record that changes over time. And it's like counting, counting on the blockchain, because of course the blockchain's time agnostic. So it's counting ledger entries basically, to figure out time. And which actually was a primitive on Genesis.Json, that there wasn't something, people couldn't figure out how to tell time from the blockchain. And so that was a fun one to solve. And now, there's clocks and stuff. There are blockchain clocks. I love seeing that. Another thing that's so cool about this whole thing is it's all, our work is open source. It's like, if you figure out something cool, of course, you're going to share it, or everyone can right click, scrub the web page and see what you did. And they're going to use it to develop in their own work. It's something I love about the whole NFT space. So anyway, so Metaversal became this one of one programmatic album that was acquired by 888, and then 11 one of one NFTs. And each of the NFTs, actually, I took and wrote a program in Python to take the audio waveform and to turn it into basically a CAD form that Andy from Pop and Sickle printed these beautiful one of one audio waveform pieces of art, and we put NFC tags in it. So the actual sculpture itself is bound to the Ethereum mainnet token of the NFT. And of course we did the whole thing with Origin Protocol. Love that team. My God, Matthew and them are just amazing people. Was this, again, this wild freaking roller coaster thing that happened. That we did it again, and we're doing it again right now. So it just keeps going. It's addictive in a good way. I think just working in a space where there's an actual ability to do something new, that hasn't happened, it's really exciting. So it's addictive.
Yeah. And it is, you've had these 3 incredible chapters of this, burgeoning NFT journey that I mean, I believe will certainly be quite historical by the time that it's all said and done, which I don't think will be any time even remotely soon.
That's right.
Um, touch wood, touch wood. There'll be twists and turns and ups and downs, of course,
Yeah.
but I truly believe in it and where we're all going here. But how do you frame that up? So let me ask you a tough question. So with the most recent release, which is Orbs,
Mm-hmm.
right? You ran into a bit of an interesting dynamic where again you went into the cave and you came out with this very, very unique, high effort, trailblazing project. And you ran into some of the, I don't want to call it the dark side of the market, right? Or of what this all can be in certain tricky moments. And you had to sort of walk a tightrope there, where I'm sure in one side of your mind you had again this thing that you sunk all heart and soul into, and then you're kind of met with these market pricing, Dutch auction dynamics, and you have the community who's approaching it from 5 different angles and perspectives. How do you navigate that type of a territory?
Oh my God. I mean, like I said before we started here, I'm still recovering from it, if I'm being totally honest. So you're exactly right. I went into the kind of creative safe space and dreamt up something that I had never seen nor heard of before, which is to make a series of works that were absolutely beautiful 3D audio reactive art with an engine that was creating music in real time, and that none of it ever looped. So it infinitely was changing forever. So the bar was insanely high, and spent so long, again, probably another 8 months working on the Orbs, my first serialized work. So that part of it alone, of kind of trait allocation and band delimiting the traits, I designed hundreds of color palettes from scratch, designed the way the objects themselves from what I call just basically a regular pyramid, a particle pyramid, an orb, a particle orb, and those are the different types of audio interactivity, all the way up through a torus, which is the rarest one of them. Hand painting these HDRI skyboxes, some of them in VR, deseaming them, upresing things in AI, working on this generative engine, all from scratch in 3JS. Yeah, I mean, made the thing. I have never been more proud of anything than I am of the Orbs to this very moment. And so, yeah, I learned some very valuable things in this project. All said and done, and thanks to people like yourself who were so kind to me in the throes of the process when we were met with my first Twitter drag. That's an experience I don't wish on anyone ever. Ever. I mean, ever. That is a horrible experience, and it's unbelievable how unkind people can be to one another. That wouldn't do that to your face, right? Like, and so what happened upon launch of this project, and the way that we found ourselves there, and the biggest lessons I learned about this are: price your own work. I didn't price my own work here, but I'm responsible for it because we accepted it. It was mega cringe town. We were mortified by this idea, and especially the part about a floor. I knew in my heart it was wrong, and I found myself in a situation where it was important to listen to the other people involved and to have a joint perspective, right? And so I should have pushed back harder on that. I knew it wasn't right. And so when it came up, I immediately, because I had wanted to change it, did change it. And that was where some of the FUD came towards us. But, obviously, there was a lot going on with 888 at that time. And he's been just nothing but wonderful to us too. So I hate seeing all this stuff happening to him. And, I hear the perspective from him, and I've heard perspective from artists, and this is not invalidating anybody's experience because people have had different experiences, I know, than I have, but I've had such a wonderful experience with him, and he's done nothing but lift me up, and many other artists that I know and know well. So it's hard to see that going on with him, but then a lot of that was directed towards us. And so again, we had our first Twitter drag, and that was an unbelievable experience because I was at my wit's end with the late stages of development of this. And so we had just gotten the generative engine completely patched and working. And I realized that it was never going to spit out orbs 100% of the time without making a joke about another project. But there's a very obvious one that came right after this that would be very easy to make a joke about, where the art is horrific, right? The generative engine for the orbs wasn't spitting out things like that were, these, silly, but they might be too dark or they might be dissonant, the music. And so I realized that I was going to have to hand grade a lot of these, and in scale, with thousands of parameters in them. I was going through the process of not curating, but hand color timing, changing the contrast, changing the reflective surfaces, changing the lighting, maybe changing the key, the mode of the music. One piece after another piece, I did 1,720 by hand. And I was doing that while all of this insane stuff was happening on Twitter. So first thing I learned, price your own work. And let me be the example for all artists to hear this, and also to ask for feedback from the community, ask for feedback from your friends, ask for feedback from artists. And really, at the end of the day, it's on you. You have to make that decision. Also, too, don't devalue your work, right? Because there's another thing that's happening right now, and people need to hear about this as well, which is, there were people that were a part of this drag, which was, by the way, the real group was probably 10 people. And out of them, one is 16, and I'm serious, 16, like one of these flippers, right? Like another one is a person that's done several, defunct, we would call them rug PFP projects, who also too is flipping and then tweets some horrible thing and deletes it, right? And what I realized is there's a tremendous amount of market manipulation happening. Out of that group of 10 people that were slinging crap at us on Twitter, 9 of them bought orbs. Just be with that for a moment. That's just crazy. So a lot of this abusiveness was to manipulate the price. And that's not something I ever thought of. I'm a musician, a programmer, a composer. I don't have a background in finance and economics. It's wild to see some of the artists who do have that. It's such a tactical advantage, I think, because they're thinking about those kind of things. People like myself are just thinking about making cool stuff that connects with people emotionally. And so I would have never thought that there would be a group of people, especially some in high school, that are trying to, manipulate the market price of something that is this prized, very emotional, creative work of yours. So I learned that too, that's possible. And then probably one of the best things I learned was from Mike Darlington, from Monster Cat. He told me, and God, our friends showed up in such big ways. Really did, and really encouraged us. I had an emotional freak out in the middle of it and said, take the auction down. This means too much to me. I don't care about the money. This was never about that. Like, if people are going to say things like that, I don't even want it. I want this art to be noticed. And our friends all rallied, and said, put this back up immediately. We know who you are, and we see what this is. But yeah, it was a lot of emotional stuff wrapped up in the end of a really strenuous development process. And so that made it just pandemonium. I guess my one closing thought about this is, we have been with some other people that this has happened to since then. And of course, the end of the story is our friends encouraged us. They said, put this auction back up. Everybody showed up. We sold it out in 5 seconds. The end. And everybody's happy now. and everybody loves their orbs. And I get to talk to orb owners all the time. We have so much cool stuff planned for the orbs. There's going to be all this functionality in the Gal protocol. The art it's my favorite thing I've ever made of anything, of a record, of anything. And so the project ended on such a positive high note, and that's really due to our friendships, honestly, because I was at my wit's end between sleep deprivation and then a kind of this emotional stuff. But yeah, I think that stories like this are really important to be told for artists because, like I said, we've shepherded some other people that have gone through this experience. One of which, and I would never ever betray their trust and name their name, was actually suicidal when this happened to them. And I am going to make a prediction that if people don't tamp down their rhetoric and the way that they talk to artists, there's going to be catastrophic tragedy. Artists inherently are a raw nerve. It's how we interpolate the world around us and make meaningful emotional things. We have to be. We're experiencing things emotionally in a way that other less sensitized people couldn't handle even for a couple minutes. And it's the way that we're able to tease out the nuance of something and to, when you see a Kandinsky painting, it's like just, I mean, or listen to a Chopin etude. It's like there are these things that artists are able to turn 12 notes into or 3 colors of paint into that is just beyond what feels possible for a human to do. That's because they're living in such an emotionally charged way. And so what people say to an artist really matters. And so the thing that I'd like to be heard here is that I think like not bashing on somebody because they're 16 and they're flipping PFPs. That's cool. Man, I probably would have been doing the same thing instead of buying, my synths with mowing lawns. Very entrepreneurial. Good for you. And be kind to artists. There's people behind these works of art and music. And are there bad actors and bad apples? Yeah, of course there are in anything. I mean, it's pretty easy to see who is altruistic and transparent, who's here for the long haul, who's showing up for the community, who's lifting other people's works. I mean, we all know who's doing these things, and I just would ask people to be compassionate and kind to those artists. And if you don't like something, don't buy it. It's really simple, I think we need to be kind, and especially as a lot of people that are coming into this and looking at these as a new sort of financial vehicle or asset class are participating in our community. We need to remind people that there's artists behind these works and to be kind. And it's perfectly fine to have an opinion and not to like something, but just don't be a bully or be abusive, because we're going to lose somebody important if we keep that kind of crap up. So that's my little PSA.
I mean, there's this incredible and historical juxtaposition going on right now, where on one side of it, it's a renaissance, and never, ever, ever to this extent have artists and collectors and investors all just met in the middle. And we have these social channels where, in many ways, DMs are open and they're flowing, and people are talking and people are advising and people are just all in there. And from one angle, that's incredibly hopeful. That is a renaissance. I mean, it's producing some incredible stuff. And I think we'll all look back on it from that angle and say, that was special. Maybe it didn't continue to quite to that extent, but we'll always have that 2-ish year time frame when it did. But then the other side of the juxtaposition, it's an impossible situation for an artist, because the money and the crypto and the investment side is so intermingled with the art. And
right,
it's not always natural or inherent to understand how to deal with that, how to price, how to mechanic, how to supply, how to do all of that stuff in such a way that satisfies. that side
Right.
of the crowd. And so then it does become relationships and navigating a day, a 24-hour time span where nuance is lost and the community loses its mind. And then,
Right.
and understanding that that time will pass and nuance will ultimately prevail and people will cool down and understand, okay, this is why that happened. This is this is that decision or this is that decision. But man, within that type of a 24-hour period, it can be wild. And there are some negatives there.
Yeah, there's no question about it. You said so many great things just then, Roger. One of the things that a big thing that I can pull from that is this glimmer of hope for the next generation of artists. Somebody that grew up when I grew up, learning to make music, we weren't taught anything about, I've had to learn these things over years and years and years. I love hearing somebody like Snoop Dogg talk because he's so freaking smart and he's such an incredible entrepreneur. And I heard him talking about Muhammad Ali taught him to pay his taxes, to make investments, and to save money. And these are things that were never taught to my generation of artists. The ray of light I can pull out of all of this is there is a new generation of artists that will be birthed from NFTs and the blockchain and that are native to cryptocurrency. They understand these things as financial vehicles in a way that artists of my generation will never fully wrap their head around. And so I see a lot of hope in that there will be, because I think, we're learning these things in real time. We make mistakes. You apologize, you put your big boy pants on, keep going, right? I think that it's going to be different for some of the generations of artists coming up because they're growing up understanding natively the subtlety of and intermingling, like you said, of DeFi and art in a way that is going to allow them to claim their worth, which is like, go art. The end. Go art. It's like it's going to flip the script on what has happened for so many years with both art and music. And so I think that is just an incredibly beautiful thing. And so we're all learning, we're all creating in plain sight. And so it's exciting as it is terrifying. And I don't think it would be this incredible innovation it is if it wasn't both of those things.
I like that. I like that summation a lot. I like go art the end. That's the perfect 4 words, man. Hey, BT, let's play a little game.
Okay.
The game is the lightning round. Now, the only rules of the lightning round, there really are no rules, but it's built around first thing that comes to mind. So it can be a word, it can be a word, it can be a phrase, it can be a sentence. I might say sky and you might say blue, just like bang, 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 that kind of a thing.
Okay.
All right. Now you can always, but you can always veer. You can always pivot. If something is really and deeply meaningful to you, you can just hit time out and go, and we can turn it into a little bit of a longer segment. So I'll leave that up to you, but let's get you warmed up. All right.
Okay.
Lightning round. Topic number 1. We'll lob an easy one. First thing that comes to mind when I say the word Ethereum.
Ethereum. Mining.
Mm-hmm. First thing that comes to mind when I say the word Lorona.
Oh, I mean, my favorite PFP ever, the end, and the greatest community ever, the end, and probably my favorite blockchain art, the end. Yeah. Just, I mean, come on. It's like, she's just too much. And I love the boys community so much. That was really my introduction to NFT art, was the boys community. And I've just made friendships there that are like for a lifetime, and her art is awesome. So yeah, hard to not stick on that one for a second.
No, I knew that was going to happen. I biased it. I'm like, I'm breaking my own rules. Let's just go down that road. It's fun to be in that community with you. And I think that's actually the perfect intersection of art and PFPs. Because I
Yeah,
think at the end of the day, you could separate boys from PFPs easily and just call it, fine art. I think Lauren is so wonderful and detail oriented, and I think incredibly intelligent about how she built that community and moves it forward.
I agree with you totally. And not to kind of deprecate it by calling it PFPs, to me, it's like you're exactly right. It's the one fine art, like actual fine art PFP. And it's way more than that too. I mean, like I will never, our boys will stay with us until, those will get handed down someday. So yeah, I love that community.
Boys for the vault. All
That's
right. Back to the lightning round. All right, here we go. So we went Ethereum, we went Lorona, and then we're going to go back to another broader topic, just NFT. What's the first thing that comes to mind?
Possibility.
Super rare.
Innovators.
Genesis.Json.
First.
Metaversal.
Oh my God, it's like my brain, that's like just 40 neurons went off at, at once. A new type of album.
Justin Graphics.
The next generation.
Orbs.
My proudest work.
The last chronologically, so not ranking someone against somebody else, but the last chronological NFT artwork that made your jaw drop.
Oh my God, it happens to me all the time. What really got me recently? I'm gonna throw you a curveball. She draws with code. I don't know if you know who this is, but you should look. Yeah, made my jaw drop.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to look now.
Yeah.
All right.
Definitely should. That made my jaw drop.
And then let's flip it a little bit, give one more shout out to a person, an artist of any type, ideally in the NFT space somewhere, that you feel just deserves more eyes or some love today.
I tell you who I want to give a shout out to, because he is like I would say he's kind of like the great conduit between so many different communities, and is such a good friend to so many people, has lifted up so many people, is Ryan. Thank you, X. He is one of my favorite. We're so lucky to have him in this community. It's crazy. And everywhere you go, everyone you talk to universally has nothing but praise and kind things to say about him. And it's all completely and totally deserved. He's been such a good friend to me and so many people that I know. So he's who I want to give a shout out to. And also too, he's doing like really the first kind of fine art Solana drop too. So I can't wait to see where that lands. I know that's going to be a big deal.
Big deal. Big shout out to Ryan. I think one of my favorite people in general, but also just someone who I think people don't recognize the extent of the bridges that he is creating for artists and for collectors and for people just coming across from, let's say, traditional art to NFTs or vice versa. I think those bridges are really, really meaningful. And I think he gets looked back at as a very historical figure.
I couldn't agree with you more. He's something else. His whole little clique too is just good folks for sure. Think the world of him.
He's the only person who has been on two, not the live streams, but the interviews. He's the only person that's been on two Origin Story interviews. He's been on with JN Silva in combination, and then he came on solo some months after that.
Amazing. I love JN too. He's something else, man. Yeah.
Great people.
I agree totally.
All right, for the lightning round wrap up, we're going to go chronological, and we're going to do it in 3 years. First thing that comes to mind when I say 2021.
2021, blockchain.
2022.
Blockchain. You could probably ask me that in 2032.
I guess it renders 2023 pretty meaningless, huh?
Exactly, dude. I have blockchain Tourette's now. It's just the greatest thing that ever happened. I mean, yeah. Carry on.
And then now we'll deviate out of the lightning round. By the way, well done. That was sharp. It was rock solid. deviated the perfect moment for Lorona, and thank you, X. Yeah, wouldn't have it any other way. And let's ask this: what's next, BT? What's next?
There's some amazing things that are coming soon. In parallel with a lot of the things that we've been working on, I've been scoring a game. I'm really getting excited about that. And also, too, I have not told anyone this. I'm going to say it out loud. I finished my next record, and I have 2 pieces of music software coming out that I've been working on. One of them I've been working on for 3 years. So for music producers, they'll be really excited about these things. I have one coming out with Plugin Alliance called Tales, and a new orchestral library coming out with the Spitfire Audio folks. Almost at the same time. One of them's a 2-year project, one of them's a 3-year project. So lots of cool stuff. I'm really excited. I'm really excited to put out this next record, the project that is going around it. I'm excited the people that we're working with on this album. There's some very exciting things about it, and then have some insanely cool blockchain artworks spun up. So in various stages of completion. So a ton more stuff this year for sure.
Can't wait to see, man. Can't wait. This has been fun. It's been a lot of fun.
For me too, Roger. I've enjoyed this so much, man. I hope I get to come on again. So invite me back, man. This is great, and just appreciate you and what you stand for, and your friendship, man. You've been a good friend. So thank you for having me here, and I've loved having this conversation.
Absolutely, man. Right back at you, and we will absolutely do this again. Origin Story Milestones will be a thing, and we'll be right back here talking about your next into the cave and out of the cave experiment.
I love it. I love it. Sounds great.
And man, I think we end with this. BT, go art, the end.
I love it. That's right. Go art, the end.
See you, man. Appreciate you.
Take care, man. See you around.